Now, to help you visualize the splitting process that Preddle goes through in coming up with these segment definitions, we can look at a tree diagram. Just go to Data Mine Tree in the navigation bar, and you'll be presented with a screen like this. Now, depending on the size and complexity of the tree, you may be faced with what looks like a blank screen, simply because we're looking at the very top left corner of a very large and complex tree. So let's just move all the way right and up. Now, you can collapse the tree at any point by just double clicking on a box. So now we're at the very top box. Now this box represents all records in the data set. Remember that the data set was split into training records or training cases and validation records or validation cases. Now, the average gambling score for those records in the training subset is 0.24, and the average gambling score for records in the validation set is 0.2. This difference arises only because the records were split in a random 70-30 split, so that because there's a different subset of records in each of the training and validation, these two numbers won't line up exactly. What Preddle does is it looks at all the predictors that you allow the algorithm to use by ticking predictors in the left panel in the settings screen. It looks at all the different combinations of splits and picks the split that provides the biggest difference between the gambling score in one split versus the gambling score in the other split. So having expanded the tree again, what it's done is it's found the best split at this point to be based on largest amount lost. So it's divided the data set into those records in these categories of largest amount lost and this category here. So it's basically said, take the records where largest amount lost is greater than $1,000, put them in this bucket, and all the other records in all the other categories of largest amount lost, which is under $100, missing, never lost any, etc., etc., put them into this bucket. And you can look at the training ratio here, it's 2.1 versus the training ratio here at 0.22. So it's found a split where there's a 10 times difference in average gambling score between this bucket and this bucket. And you can hover over any bucket to get a bit more information about what's in it. In this case, in the training records that are in this bucket, there's 1,984.4 records on a weighted basis, of which the sum of the gambling score in that training set was 428.24, and you can see the equivalent numbers for the validation records in that bucket. Now, once it's split in this fashion, it will attempt to split further, so it would have attempted to have split this bucket here, but recall that we set a minimum bucket size or a minimum node size in the settings page, so we can conclude from the fact that this doesn't have any further branches coming out of this node that it wasn't able to find any further subsets from the records in this node that still met that minimum size criteria. It's stopped here at this node. This is now a terminal node. A terminal node becomes a segment. So you'll recall that there was a segment definition, it was probably the very first segment definition that we saw in the definitions table, that said largest amount lost range equals 1001 plus, where the training ratio was 2.1 and the validation ratio was 2.2. Conversely, with this bucket, it was able to find a further split. It split again on largest amount lost. This time it split out the 500 to 1000 bucket, and on the left here it basically took all the other categories of largest amount lost, and then the next split down was again largest amount lost, but then down here it split on highest grade attended, so it took out the 1st through 8th grades, moved them right, took all the other categories, put them here. For those that were in the largest amount lost range equals under $100, never lost any money or missing, and were in 1st through 8th grade, then down here it further split on region into South and Midwest, and down here it split by age. Again, each of these terminal nodes will be a segment definition. Any node that's not terminal won't be a segment definition because it's been able to be split into further subsets, which themselves will either be a terminal node and therefore a segment definition themselves, or in turn will be able to be split into further branches. You can click on View Full Screen to maximize this. You may or may not find this a bit easy to navigate. What you can actually do here is just hold down the mouse wheel if you have one, and move the mouse right, up, down. You can pan around a little bit. The navigation could take a little bit of getting used to, but you can also hold down Control and roll the mouse wheel back to zoom out or zoom in. If you're using a trackpad on a laptop, you can hold down the Control button and move 2 fingers on the trackpad up or down in order to zoom. It's quite helpful actually to zoom once you've collapsed the box, because then you can zoom in and actually see what the text says. And you can click the X here to get back to the normal view.